Dr. Susanne Buchner-Sabathy. I welcome you to our talk today. Can you give a short introduction about what you make and about, everything?
Thanks for inviting me. I feel very honored. I am blind. I've been visually impaired since my childhood, and I lost my sight 16 years ago. I'm a translator and a linguist. I studied linguistics, and I do translations in the field of psychoanalytics and art and culture and museums, and so on.
Very interesting and
Yes.
a very complex field, actually.
Yes, and very, very, very interesting.
Yes.
I prefer translating texts which I like reading. After I've lost my sight, I was confronted with the situation in which I lost access to a lot of information in the internet and in books. And so I tried to get an expert in this field, and now I'm a consultant in accessibility, in digital accessibility, and I offer trainings for smartphone use for blind and visually impaired people. Well, and I'm engaged in several projects, like in a task force for accessible home appliances, or I've been in a project dealing with accessible museums and exhibitions.
Maybe we talk about this aspect a little bit later. But the first question, I did prepare some for you. We see things not as they are, but as we are. This sentence comes from Memo Akten and his work, Learning to See. I saw this recently in the museum in Linz at the Ars Electronica. What people perceive is a reconstruction based on our expectations and previous beliefs and experiences. In my artistic work, I examine the interface of perception and attitude to a place, a specific topic, or to other people, and the resulting actions. I translate my ideas performatively, installatively, or by drawing, or, as it is now the case, with you in a conversation. Susanne, what aspects are important for you in interacting with other people and your environment?
Very interesting question. I think basically being in a specific situation or being with a specific person is always a contact situation. So for me it is important that the contact develops in a form which is appropriate for me and which I can control. Control in a certain degree. I need clear structures, clear orientation. For example, a room full of people talking with each other is very complex and very complicated for me. I cannot locate the speakers, and it is difficult for me to interact with many persons at the same time. It is difficult to interact with a situation which is very complex, like some traffic situations. But if it is possible to get into touch with the situation or with the person, I can develop my own perceptions and my own actions.
So we are already very close to the next question. It's about perception, actually. It's a complex process that is also culturally shaped. Perception happens through our senses: hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, touching. which perceptual senses are central to you in order to get an image or to get an impression?
Since I've lost my sight, it's now not the visual sense. For me, hearing is very central, is very essential. Touching, even the smell is important. But there is another way to get an impression, and that's language. In many cases, it's very important for me to have a verbal description of a situation or of an image. At the same time, I think getting an image is drawing yourself an image in your head, in your brain.
Interesting.
And that's an action which persons have to perform even if they don't see. So if I want to have a spatial impression, if I want to know how a room looks like for me, I have to draw it, or I have to construct it with my means in my head. And my means are hearing. For example, a big room has a different sound than a small room, or a house with a door in a house wall has a different sound than the wall itself. So hearing is important, touching in order to get information about objects, or in order to read Braille. And smell is important, especially for me, especially in contact with persons. And I don't, I'm not talking about perfume, but about how the other person feels. If the person is anxious, the smell is different than if the person is happy.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. Anyway, this talk is about discovering new perceptual aspects and exploring more closely the perception of what and how we experience something. Recent studies have shown that the brain makes decisions about visual and auditory stimuli by relying on already stored sensory findings. I conclude that we constantly kind of sort, classify and evaluate our impressions in order to be able to orientate ourselves. You did mention this also before in your answer. Visual arts, especially in museums, can usually only be viewed. So one needs the visual sense. How do you approach artworks?
Essentially, there are two ways for me. The one is language, good picture descriptions. And I think it's an art in itself to describe a picture so that I can get an impression which is similar to the impression of a seeing person. As I mentioned, I took part in a EU project, which has Arches was its name, in which museums from different European countries tried to improve access for persons with impairments. And in this project, we developed some description for specific artworks. So language is an important thing. The other important thing for me is something I'm
curious.
It's difficult to me to talk about it since I cannot explain it.
But try.
When I face when I face an object or a work of art, I have feelings, I have impressions. And those might be very intense. Sometimes I don't feel anything, but sometimes I feel very, very dense.
Kind of waves or something like this?
No, images or feelings, just if, for example, I had the pleasure to have a guided tour through the Mark Rothko exhibition in Vienna by Dr. Rothrat Kral, who is a very engaged expert in accessibility for blind people. And she offered me a guided tour, and at the beginning she wanted to describe the pictures, the paintings, but then I asked her to don't tell me anything, and I proposed to her that I would tell her what I'm feeling in front of these paintings.
Interesting.
And in fact, I have some shades of grey in my view, so I can discern if a room is completely dark or not. I couldn't see much of Rothko's paintings because the rooms were dimmed, the light was dimmed. But in front of some of those paintings, I had very intense and bright feelings. For example, in one case, I had the impression that wind was going through my hair first, and then I said, no, it isn't wind, it is water. It's like water running through my hair on my shoulders. And the interesting thing was that she told me her association with this abstract painting was a waterfall.
What coincidence. Interesting. Really interesting. I never heard that before.
There's a concept, I don't know if you ever heard about it, from Yves Klein, who talked about non-visual art. He had the idea, which is a bit, I don't know, esoteric, and I'm not esoteric, but he said, art impregnates or soaks space. So if there is a real work of art in a room, the space, the air is full of art. And perhaps he's right. I don't know.
I don't know either. So maybe we just go to the next question, if you allow me.
Yes.
Okay. In times of digitization, we are experiencing an increase of images and information in social networks, as well as in everyday life, such as through mobile phone use. I have the impression that the flood of information is overwhelming for many, at least for me. How do you perceive that? Do you have ideas and suggestions for the sighted and non-sighted?
I have the same impression. Well, I don't really have any advice.
Why not?
Because I don't know how to deal with this situation. I think you have to be very, very critical and very clear about the amount of information you can deal with. And if you have the impression that there is too much information, you really have to shut the door, I think.
So it's a kind of process to find this out through using it.
Yes,
and
yes. To
put the stop button
yes,
at a certain
yes,
point.
To find a personal balance, I think a certain kind of media criticism is helpful, since the media publish a lot of images in order to get certain reactions, to get certain emotional or political reactions. So I think it is helpful to ask, why do they show me this picture?
Mm-hmm. To ask the context and of the information,
yes,
in
yes,
general.
Yes, yes.
To reflect this more.
To reflect it, yes. Mm-hmm.
So my last question, when was the last time that you were touched by an artwork that is triggered an inner process, and why was that?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I told you, the Mark Rothko exhibition was a very, very intense experience for me. But there are artworks even in my home. Over there is
look around now. Yes,
there's a
I
sculpture.
See. Yeah.
Made by, I hope I it's I remember his name right, James Carvajal. Carvajal, and the sculpture is called Wind, and it gives me a feeling of air, of wind, of parcel when I touch it. And for me it's a very interesting combination of air and of something very robust. And in another room I have a picture of an artist called Lecho, and it's a collage of photos, small pieces of photos, of old photos, and the collage is called Meadows and Forests, Wiesen und Wälder. And the pieces show just what is in the title. There are different shades of green in there. You see just pieces of meadows and forests, and this collage gives me a feeling of freshness, of coolness, of shelter, and of silence. And it gave me, even when I found it in an exhibition, I didn't see it, but I walked through the room, and I passed in front of this collage, and I had this feeling of shelter and coolness.
Interesting. Wow, this sounds really interesting. I never heard this before, so it's really something new for me.
Yes, I'm shy about this. Since
but why?
Why?
This is a very personal way of perceiving art, no?
Yes, that's right. But
everyone does this, no? Somehow to perceive the work on his or her own way.
Yes,
no?
That's right. That's right. But there are blind people who say that they can feel colors, and I don't believe them. So I don't want that you have the impression that I'm talking about some very esoteric.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I already know you. So I say thank you for the interview.
Pleasure, thank you.
Thank you.